Hey, Husker fans, welcome to another episode of the Husker Big Red podcast with Chris Peterson and Danny Gillette. As always, go Big Red. Welcome back to another episode of the Husker Big Red podcast. I'm Chris Peterson, and joining me, as always, is my co-host Danny Gillette. And Danny, how are you doing, man? It's back to post Christmas. I know it's been a little while since we did one of these. Been busy for the holidays, but how was your Christmas, man?
It was good. I didn't get much, but I bought a lot of my gifts that I would have wanted during the year. And, I'd say I got a pretty good present with the Dylan Raiola commitment and this 2024 class, so I'm not complaining terribly. I know that you got some new headphones. You're not using them right now, but I'm excited for you to debut those on the show. So
Definitely, yeah. Got some of the Beats by Dre, so that was pretty sweet. So thanks to the family that hooked me up with that, and but the Dylan Raiola, commitment, that was probably the best Christmas present that I got. Although as a Packers fan, I'm still holding out hope. I was hoping that defensive coordinator Joe Barry would get fired, but that hasn't happened yet. Although I'm pretty happy with the play of Jordan Love, so I guess I'll take that as my Christmas present this year.
yeah, I mean Jordan Love putting up stats comparable to rookie year Aaron Rodgers, I believe. So, in New England we have Bailey Zappi and Mac Jones, and actually we beat the Denver Broncos on a field goal from Chad Ryland, who's actually missed like 7 or 8 kicks this year. So, although it doesn't help in our tanking pursuits like I would have wanted, I'll take a Christmas Eve win.
It's always nice to get a W. I mean, no matter what. And that's going to be an interesting situation to see what the Patriots do there. I'm a big Bill Belichick fan. I've loved the Pats throughout the Tom Brady era. It's been rough these past few years. I have not watched many games lately because it's been, pretty rough. So I'm not gonna search out the Pats on the Sunday ticket, But it'll be interesting to see if they keep Bill around. I think, maybe they could find a quarterback. But at any rate, Nebraska has found a quarterback. And we're going to talk about this here in just a minute. Before we get to it, we're going to talk some 2024 recruiting class superlatives. Before we do that, if you haven't done us this big favor of hitting that subscribe button, please do that so you don't miss any of our content. Hit that like button. It really helps us out. Get into that comment section too, because we just love talking Nebraska football. So let's get into it, man. The first, this is a big time class for Nebraska football, a top 20 class according to 24/7 sports team rankings. I believe it's 8 blue chippers. It might even be up to 9 now. I'd have to double check my counting. I'm not sure if that includes Dylan Raiola or not. But we're going to go through kind of our signing day superlatives. We do want to preface this that, obviously we realize with many of these things, Dylan Raiola could be the answer. So with some of those, we'll probably, say Dylan Raiola and then, mention somebody else. So it's not just us spending this entire time talking about Dylan Raiola, although I do love talking about his future impact here at Nebraska. Yeah. But in any rate, so biggest first year impact, we know. I'll just leave the floor open to you, Danny, since it's there's a lot of a conversation about Dylan Raiola, potentially being the starter or not. So I won't limit him from this first topic of conversation. Mm-hmm. What's your first biggest first year impact in this class?
Honestly, Carter Nelson, I think, could be the biggest first year impact because I believe Nebraska's, they did it last year. They ran a 2 tight end set and a 2 tight end set of Thomas Fidone and Carter Nelson. I mean, that would just be the dream. Nelson, we talked about his positional versatility, but I think at the end of the day, he's going to be a tight end. And, it's the way he runs after the catch, runs with the football. The tight end is also the quarterback's best friend in terms of a safety valve. So I could see Carter Nelson making the biggest first-year impact.
Definitely. And, I would say obviously outside of Dylan Raiola, who I believe will start that first game against UTEP. Carter Nelson's definitely a guy that, I would have near on my list. I think, it's going to be interesting to see how they use him. They even, Matt Rule talked about using him as some running back. He had the Walter Payton tweet that he said was about Carter Nelson, diving over the pile into the end zones. I am interested to see how that looks with the positionless, offense and type of stuff like that. But I'm going to go a little bit of a different route with the biggest impact, and this might surprise some people, but I'm going to go with Roger Gradney. And the reason I'm going to go with Roger Gradney is because I just think he's a freak athlete, man. And I think he's probably the most underrated recruit in this class in terms of abilities, like 6'3", I don't remember quite exactly how. I think he's 180, 190, but he can
190.
really he can really play. And as a defensive back, I mean, just go watch his highlights. Like he is super impressive, and I just think he's going to get on the field early next season. And outside of Dylan Raiola, I don't know that there's going to be a ton of guys making like a super early impact on this team because there is a lot of starters returning. But I think in that secondary, if you have a guy like that who can, you know, have his type of athleticism and ball skills too, being a wide receiver, I just feel like he could be, a guy that makes an impact besides Dylan Raiola, on the defensive side of the ball and Roger Gradney.
Absolutely. And I think there's a lot of very under the radar players on the defensive side of the football in this class, and I'm excited to see how, Tony White works with them because he certainly put his players, meaning White, in a position to succeed last year.
Definitely, he did that, and they were impressive in how they utilized, their freshmen, Cameron Leonard, Prince Mamalian, Maverick Noonan was getting some, playing time.
Riley Van Yep.
Yep, Riley Van Poppel. So, they're not afraid to, and I like that. I mean, I remember back to, when Pete Carroll was at USC and they were like, one of the programs that like started playing, their freshmen like right away. Like if they had big time freshmen like Reggie Bush and those guys, they played them right away. And that's what good programs do, get those guys ready, get them out on the field. Like if they're the best player, let them play because the really good ones are only going to be there for, a few years. So, but at any rate, and I should say Roger Gradney, 6'1", 190. I should
Mhm.
correct myself there. But I really like him, and I feel like he's a very underrated prospect in this class. And another guy I guess I could throw in that mix, first year impact. It might be tough, but it wouldn't shock me to see Grant Bricks, make an impact. Or another guy on my radar too, Ja'Cory Barney at wide receiver.
I was gonna even maybe say Vincent Shavers too.
Yeah,
I think he's one of the very, and I guess we'll kind of talk about this now, but I think he's one of the very underrated, commitments in this class. But he just was the MVP, I believe, of the Broward Dade High School All-Star football game in Florida. I couldn't find the exact statistics, but I mean, with the talent down in Florida, that's no small feat.
no, not at all. And yeah, I believe he could make an impact right away. And McGahee too, Willis McGahee the fourth. I think both of those guys, could definitely. I'm not saying they're going to walk in here and play right away, but they do have some, pass rush ability as well to play that linebacker spot. And
Yeah.
depending on what happens, Nebraska offered, another transfer portal linebacker, X-Ree Alexander. I'm not sure if that's probably totally butchered his first name, but he's from Idaho, played at Idaho last year. So if they don't add somebody, then there's definitely going to be an opportunity for one of those young guys, I think, to work themselves into the mix. And that could be Dylan Rogers from last year, too. Um, so let's move on to best NFL prospect. I think we can all pretty much agree that Dylan Raiola is the best. He's the number 2 quarterback, the number 6 overall prospect in the 24/7 Sports Composite rankings. So he obviously has, the moniker of being a potential, first round pick like a Caleb Williams or a Drake May,
Mm.
somebody along those lines. So putting him aside, who do you think in this recruiting class 2024 is the best? Has the best NFL future, is the best NFL prospect.
Ooh, this is interesting. Because there's a lot of names that I could put here.
Yeah, and there's a lot of
Um,
projection. There's a lot of projection too with some of these guys. Thinking
yeah.
ahead, what are they going to be like 3 or 4 years from now?
Quinn Clark. This is an offensive league, meaning the NFL, and I mean Clark already has the height at 6'5". Right now he's listed at 190, excuse me, but I believe that's going to change once he gets to Lincoln. He's kind of the tall, fast receiver that a lot of teams want. Somebody that can present matchup problems on the outside and also allow for the slot receivers to get open due to the attention that the outside receivers create. So I think Quinn Clark could be, one of the better NFL prospects in this class. He's got the speed, he's got the downfield threat ability, and I'm interested to see how he is utilized in this offense. Because there are so many bodies at wide receiver, but there's a lot of talent at wide receiver, and we were actually just talking about this off the air. We saw, times where Marcus Satterfield really wanted to throw the football down the field, but we just didn't have the horses to do so. And, with with Dylan Raiola and Quinn Clark and Clark's ability to get down the field, I think we can finally see the offense that this coaching staff wants to run.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting because with the new quarterback, it's going to be an entirely. I think it is going to be different, and it'll be interesting to see, if they add a quarterbacks coach. I mean, Matt Rule kind of, he was asked about the staff at his signing day press conference, and didn't, kind of look down and didn't want to really address it. So that definitely makes me think there's going to be some changes happening, and so we don't know if that's going to be like, if a quarterback's coach is going to want to come in and be the passing game coordinator, if there's going to be something along those lines to get somebody like that here. So, it'll be interesting to see. But I do think, obviously, last year Nebraska threw the ball, I think, as few times as any team in the Power Five. So, I mean, we're going to see more passing attempts next year regardless. But yeah, I think it's going to look more like Matt Rule's offense. Last year, I think they tried to, just do whatever they could with Heinrich and whoever to try to make it work. So this year, I think we'll really see, more of what Marcus Satterfield wants to do.
And quite honestly, Quinn Clark and Malachi Coleman have a lot of similarities in their game. So I'm interested to see how those two potentially play off each other.
Yeah, Quinn Clark out of Montana, definitely. I've seen him play in person. He's a freak athlete. So, Matt Rule talked about, like, if I can't make somebody like that into a good player, then I'm not a very, very good coach. So I'm excited to see. And again, Quinn Clark, I think, is like the prime example of that. He can play receiver. He was a good defensive back too. I mean, his coach told me that, even though he's also an incredible punter. I watched him play, and he changed the game with his punting ability. Not that he's going to punt for Nebraska, just to show you the kind of athlete he is. And then they had the team he played for, Gallatin High School. They have a really good kicker, and he stepped up in practice and hit like a 50-yarder to Quinn Clark, even though he's never like kicked a ball hardly ever in his life. Stepped up and hit like a 52-yarder. So I mean, it's just like some people are just freakish athletes, and they're just good at everything. And Quinn Clark is one of those people. So it's going to be interesting to see how this staff develops him over the next 4 years. And in terms of my best NFL prospect outside of Dylan Raiola, I'm going to go. It's for me. It was a really tough choice between Grant Brix and Carter Nelson, because I do think that Brix. I don't know if he's going to be a left tackle at the next level. Maybe not even at Nebraska, looking at his arm length, but I think he could be, an elite guard. Like one of the, I think he could be a day 2 draft pick, as an offensive guard down the road. And Carter Nelson, I feel the same way about. I mean, he's 6'4", 205. He can, teaching him to play tight end is going to be, and watching him play receiver and getting handles. I just think he's going to be such a versatile weapon. And with his athleticism, I think 3-4 years down the road, outside of Raiola, I think he's going to be the best NFL prospect. So, I mean, I could see Raiola obviously being a first rounder, but Nelson and Brix strike me as guys that, have a very good chance of at least being like a day 2 pick in a few years.
Yeah, and you look at just how other offensive linemen, from Nebraska have, made an impact in the NFL. You look at a guy like Cam Jurgens, a former tight end, and now I saw him making a couple pancakes on Monday night. So it's
Mm-hmm.
going to be interesting to see because, truth be told, and it's not as common that it happens, but some players, they find their groove better in the NFL and they find their home in the NFL better than at the collegiate level. So it'll be interesting to see, how the offensive linemen do this year. And, you know, we've seen their highlights and, we've seen their tape, so to speak, but, you know, it'll be fun to see them in live game action and to see how it translates. And truth be told, I think they're going to be better developed than the past lineman classes have been. I know people are probably throwing a little bit of caution to the wind, given how some of our linemen have developed in previous years. But I think these Bricks, Tamua, somebody like Gibson Pyle, I think these linemen are really going to be built for the long term and life after college football.
Yeah, it's going to be. I think the progression. We saw a lot of positive development this year from the O line under Donovan Raiola, which is why he got an extension under Matt Rule, and I think we're going to continue to see that going forward. And it's just this entire staff. We've talked about it before, but there's just more of a focus on the line. Matt Rule. that he has a background in that. And so I just think there's more emphasis. He really put an emphasis on being strong in the offensive and defensive line, and they did that last year. The defensive line was damn good, and the
Mhm.
offensive line, yeah, maybe it wasn't the best in the Big Ten, but it took a measurable
Yeah.
step forward with a lot of the same guys. I mean, they added Ben Scott, and it was the same guys, and they took a huge step forward. So, I mean, who they led the big, or they were first or second in the Big Ten in rushing. So, I mean, with three quarterbacks that basically could not throw the football, and they still ran for over 200 a game. So that tells you something about the offensive line. Um, all right, so biggest sleeper in this class, and so we have a couple different categories, underranked, and then also biggest sleeper. So a little bit of a difference there, but just in general, who's your biggest sleeper in this class?
This is a tough one, but because I think there are a lot in this class. But Keelan Smith, I think, will be my biggest sleeper. The 2023 Missouri High School Athlete of the Year by Max Preps. 17 touchdowns, over 1,000 yards. I think you talk about a positionless offense. Right now, he's listed as a tight end, but he could easily go play as a wide receiver. And I think when you look at this tight end class, you see a lot of names, Ian Flint, Keelan Smith, guys like that, plus, Carter Nelson, and then, a guy on the roster like Thomas Fidoni. There are a lot of tight end names, but I think that offers them the flexibility because I think a guy like Smith and, somebody like Nelson don't necessarily have to be just boxed into the tight end position. But in terms of the biggest sleeper, for me, it's Keelan Smith. I don't know how he flew as under the radar as he did.
Yeah, I would agree. I'm going to go with Keelan Smith as well. I think we're going to do underranked next, and I thought about him for that position as well. But he is ranked 790, which is underranked for him. But you look at his career, one over the last 3 seasons, believe over the last 2 seasons, 112 receptions, 128 receptions for his career, 2,187 yards, and it playing in Missouri, 28 touchdowns, 17 yards per reception. This is a kid that I think is going to come in and yeah, I think people are going to look back in a few years and like, how in the hell was he ranked as a 3-star recruit? How was he not, like, how did Missouri not go in there and recruit him harder? So yeah, I really think he's going to be, a guy that is talked about. And I think he's going to be an NFL player. His dad, Neil Smith, obviously is a Pro Football Hall of Famer, so he's got the bloodlines, he's got the size. He produced this year, and it's going to be fun to watch him. Wide receiver, tight end. I think maybe he ends up more as a wide receiver, but you never know. Maybe they move him as a move tight end. I mean, it's a lot of the same thing, really. A move tight end and a slot receiver. I mean, there are differences, but excuse me, in the passing game sense of it, they're movable pieces. So yeah, I 100% agree that uh, Keelan Smith is the biggest sleeper in this class.
And there's a lot of movable pieces in this class, and I think that also speaks to the different possibilities that we could have on both offense and defense. And I think it's important to have positional versatility and to let players go where they fit best. And I think a class with this much talent allows them to do that.
All right, working our way through. Excuse me. Most underranked. So you could see, a little bit of a similar thing with the sleeper, but this really is defining, talking about the ranking. So who, in this class are we going to look back at and say like they definitely should have been ranked higher? And it could be, it could be anybody at any. I mean, it could be Dylan Raiola. Maybe you think you should have been ranked number 1 instead of number 6. So who's the most underranked in this class?
Vincent Shavers, easily. He is an absolute go-getter. He can play off the edge. He's tremendously quick in his pursuits. He has good, side-to-side speed. He's a guy, and actually, prior to him, I thought it was Braylon Prudy, but Vincent Shavers, to me, I mean, I understand, Florida is a big state, and he was originally a Miami commit, so they saw the value in him, but I don't know how he's not at least a 4-star. I mean, he is going to be an absolutely massive get. I mean, just thinking about him and McGahee and Prudy, and that it's just the possibilities again are endless. But I have to go with Shavers.
I'm gonna go. And this might surprise some people. I'm gonna go with Daniel Kalen. So he's ranked 559 overall in the composite rankings for 24/7. the 36th ranked quarterback. Like this guy was at the Elite 11. I feel like he's much better. He's a much better quarterback than number 36, and he's much better than 559. I believe that he should be a 4-star. I believe he should be a top 350 player, a top 20 quarterback. That's how I see Daniel Kalen. I think that it hurts him that he's from the state of Nebraska. You know, the
Mm,
competition isn't as stiff, but I mean, he won an award at the Elite 11 rank, academy, I believe for accuracy. So I know everybody is on
yep.
the Dylan Raiola train, and I'm there too. Like I'm the conductor of it. Like I want him to start, day one. But at the same time, like I think Daniel Kalen has the chance to give us some real depth at the position, and he's going to help this team over the next 3 years. If they can get him to stick around, and then if they do, and he's a starter for 2 years, like that's the dream scenario for Nebraska because this guy will absolutely win games here. I 100% believe that, and so I hope that it all works out. I've talked about that, but that's why I'm going to go with this most underranked because I don't know how Danny Dimes isn't a 4-star.
I think he actually might be on one of the recruiting services, but by and large, he has been, tremendously disrespected in terms of a national evaluation standpoint.
Yeah, he was. At one point, 24/7 did have him as I believe, as a 4-star, but they dropped him down. He's a 3-star even in their rankings. So, they still have him as an 89, but I just think that his accuracy, like yeah, he doesn't have the biggest arm in the world, but I just think the mental part of it and the decision making. I think for college quarterbacks, and being accurate and being able to process and make quick decisions, I think is just those two things can take you a long way in college football. So I'm
Actually,
excited about him.
can I add a name to that list really quick? David Hall. I think him and Kalen are both an 89. I don't know how Hall's not a 4-star either. Again, I think maybe it's because he's from Nebraska, but I mean, man, he can fly. He has all the speed to be a downfield threat. He is going to be really good. I think he is tremendously underranked too.
Yeah, and you mentioned Braylon Prudy. I would say him too. He was another guy with the biggest sleeper. I mean, he's like six, whatever. Let's see, 6'4", I believe he is. Let me pull it up here, just so I don't lead you guys astray. Um, but I mean, he runs a 4.42, and that was the stopwatch 4.42 from Matt Rule, and this was a camp kid, and they saw him at the camp. Ran 4.42. Matt Rule had him running again, ran another 4.42, and this is on a stopwatch. This isn't electric time. This is a stopwatch 4.42. He's ranked a 1166, so he's not even in the top 1100 players in the country. The only other scholarship offer he has is Eastern Illinois. So definitely Braylon Prudy, watch out for this guy, whether it's at safety, linebacker, corner, somewhere. Like he's another one like Quinn Clark that Nebraska, I think, is going to be excited about. And we'll see how they develop him. But at any rate, as we move along now, we talked about this one. Nebraska's got a lot of great, position halls, quarterback, wide receiver, secondary, linebacker, I think is, pretty decent. So who do you think is what's the best position hall from the 2024 class?
Quarterback. We needed. I mean, we needed quarterbacks desperately, and sure, it's easy to say because of Raiola and Kalen, but when you look at what our quarterback room was just a month ago, and how we couldn't even throw an overhand pass, and now you have two Elite 11 quarterbacks. I mean, sure, they have the name, and they're getting a lot of media attention, but like you've said before, we were, a good quarterback away from going to the Big Ten championship game. And, we were a quarterback away, in my opinion, from beating Michigan State. And, there were just so many. We were a quarterback away from scenarios over the course of the season. And, sure, it's easy to pick the quarterback position, but I have to go there. I mean, I think it's going to be an absolute game changer because, quite honestly, we haven't had consistent, solid quarterback play. I mean, sure, Casey Thompson was good, but I mean, I can't remember the last time we had solid, consistent quarterback play because I wasn't exactly on the Adrian Martinez train either.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely quarterback is the best position hall. Offensive line would probably be my number two.
Yeah.
With Preston Tamua, Grant Bricks, Gibson Pyle. I really like some of the guys that they got up front. Tight end obviously is another. With Nelson and Ingwerson, and if you want to put Keelan Smith there, even wide receiver. If you put Keelan Smith at wide receiver, it's a pretty damn good haul. But just the quarterback position. I mean, getting one Elite 11 quarterback would have been great for Nebraska, but to get two, and that's just the ideal scenario for this team. And the way that they want to do it, they want to build through high school recruiting. They don't want to build through the portal. So, this is the way to really, have sustained success, not be a 1 year wonder like Michigan State. They had one great season and then they sucked. You know what I mean? Like doing the transfer portal thing. And that's a lot of these teams that do it that way. Like look at Colorado. Like we don't want to be Colorado right now. They signed 6 people in their entire recruiting class, and like
But they nailed the transfer portal.
they did, yeah. I mean, but let's see how that works out for them though, because you're bringing in 18. I mean, you're turning over 20 guys, every year, and I mean, we'll just. I'm very interested to see how that works out for them because, I just don't know how you build a team with 6 high school recruits. Like, so you're just going to be going into the portal every year, and that's the thing is like I just feel like you create this mindset of the Colorado. I feel like the Colorado guys, they go there, they're going to play and it'll work out great, or they're going to be gone in a year. Like if a guy transfers in there and doesn't play, he's not staying. So there's just not really going to be any type of program development there. So I don't know. I like what Nebraska's doing, and I like the focus on high school recruiting. So
Me too.
um,
Me too.
and then the last one here, well, we got two. We have a few more actually. So let's go. Biggest fan favorite. Who's going to be the biggest fan favorite?
It's very easy for me to say Raiola, but I honestly think it's gonna be Danny Kaelin. I mean, just being a local Nebraska kid, and quite honestly, um, I think it could even go to, Hall or McMorris. I mean, this is such a cop out answer, but I think a lot of these guys are going to be fan favorites just from the way they play. Uh, I'm gonna go Kalen, but I could also see somebody like, you know, Pyle really being a fan favorite too. The way they play, the way he plays, nasty. Uh, somebody like, Preston Tamua being a fan favorite because again, he's a big time player. I could see Vincent Shea. Like, there's so many fan favorites to pick from. I think in this class because they all put their nose to the grindstone and work extremely hard.
I'd say obviously besides Dylan Raiola, who's an obvious answer for most of these questions. I think it's going to be Grant Bricks. I think it's going to be Grant Bricks. I believe that this guy is going to be the second coming of Zach Weiger, and I know that is a big,
That is.
that's a big thing to say. I know that. I realize that, but if this guy plays guard, and I know that, that's why, like, on 3 lists him as an interior offensive lineman. He's 6'5", like Zach Wiegert. Watch this guy drive block. I mean, this guy is maybe the best run blocker in this entire class, honestly.
Hmm.
Like,
No, I
so,
agree.
and I think he's going to be pancaking the crap out of people, and Nebraska fans are going to absolutely love this guy. Gibson Pyle, too. I mean,
Yeah.
man, when you have Gibson Pyle and Grant Bricks and Preston Tamu on the same offensive line, holy hell, those guys are road graders. Like like talk about guys that just want to get after you and maul you. Like this offensive line class is going to be one that Nebraska fans love. So I'm just going to put it at that.
And quite honestly, a guy like Jake Peters, I mean, he's the same type of way.
Yep.
And they're all the same style of lineman, and I think it's what Donovan Raiola, not anybody else, wants, and that makes a big difference too.
Yep, I 100% agree. There's a lot more alignment between the O-line coach and the offensive coordinator and the head coach and all that. So being on the same page with your coaches, it's amazing how that makes things work better. um,
Yeah.
best fits for offense and defense.
Davon Hall for offense, I think when you look at his ability to run after the catch and that pure speed, and yes, the speed can be said for a lot of these players. Um, Hall's 6'1", 180, but he is a burner, man. And I think he'll be able to showcase his skills in this offense. And let's not. I just said Hall would be the one, but honorable mention to Isaiah McMorris and Clark as well. So there's a lot of good fits for this offense, and I think Hall is going to really be a good get. I wanted him back when you know um, Mickey Joseph was recruiting him, and Frost was still here, so he's been on my radar for a long time.
Yeah, I can buy Davon Hall as a best fit on offense because this is a team that wants to be explosive. Like they want to take shots down the field and they want to create big plays. Basically, they want to run the ball down your throat, and then they're going to play action and throw it down the field. And they've got the athletes to do it, man. So yeah, Davon Hall, would be a great. I think is a really good pick there. On defense, I'm going with Caleb Benning, and the reason I'm doing that is just because on the back end of this defense, Tony White, like Matt Rule even said sometimes this year, like I didn't know if a guy was playing cornerback or safety, and I think Caleb Benning is like the perfect um, you know, representation of that. I've always thought he was the perfect guy for this defense. He's an incredible athlete. He's a ball hawk. He played wide receiver, but he's a good tackler. I could see him as a slot corner. I could see him as as in the nickel. I could see him playing safety, very similar to Malcolm Malcolm Hartzog, and I think that Caleb Benning is going to be a playmaker in this defense for years to come.
Vincent Shavers, I mean, I think I know you mentioned him already, but for me, he's a guy that I just, watched his highlights and I'm like, wow, I see why they got him here. And it was very
Mhm.
similar to Willis McGahee. So I feel like people have a lot of PTSD from the last group of Florida players, but
Yeah.
I think these guys will fit much better. And I think hopefully this builds a better Florida pipeline than what was here before. And I think it has a chance to.
I think there's just a better culture here before,
Yeah.
and so, but yeah, I agree. Shavers and McGahee probably were my next outside of Caleb Benning. They were my next two. Just I think that they're perfect for that jack position, or even the weak side line. I could even see one of them being a weak side and one of them being a jack. Just it doesn't. Tony White is so smart about using guys. He'll find the way to get the most out of those guys. So, um, all right, last signing day, recruiting class superlative, biggest program changer. Who's going to have the biggest impact on this program in 3 years?
Are we not allowed to pick Rayola? I feel like
We
that's.
are allowed to pick
Uh,
Rayola, I think here, but
I'm
you
gonna.
can pick somebody else too.
You can go first because I'm gonna search this one because I'm not gonna pick Rayola. That's just an easy answer.
Well, I mean, I'll say Raiola as my generic answer because that's probably the right answer. But outside of Dylan Raiola, biggest game changer. I think it's going to be Carter Nelson. I think that Carter Nelson is just going to be, a kind of player like Nebraska has rarely seen before. Just a true mismatch nightmare. Whether it's just every time he touches the football. I mean, this guy is, I could say that he could be the next, Travis Kelsey or whatever, but like Travis Kelsey, I don't think is as good of an athlete as Carter Nelson. So like really, I do believe the sky is the limit for this guy, and whether he reaches that potential here at the next level, I just think like, he's gonna outside of Dylan Raiola, I think he's just gonna give Raiola an incredible, weapon to utilize for the next 3 years. So that's what I'm going with.
You kind of stole mine, so now I'll have to think. But biggest program changer. I have to think. Let's see. I'm gonna say probably. Hmm. Grant Bricks, because I think it's going to start a culture of a stronger offensive line. We already saw it a little bit last year. But the fact that he's a highly rated offensive line commitment, and the fact that you also have a guy like Preston Tamua here. I know we only supposed to pick one guy, but Grant Bricks to me and the rest of the offensive line recruits, I think, can really build something special.
I yeah, 100% agree there. He's another great choice. So a great recruiting class altogether. So hopefully that gave you guys some insight. Before we wrap things up today, we wanted to touch on some of the transfer portal rumblings. We got a few things out there. Since we've last did our show, Dante Dowdell has scheduled an official visit that will take place next weekend, I believe. And he obviously is the former Oregon running back, essentially ranked as a top 10 running back prospect by every recruiting service. As we said before, Oregon, they kind of misutilized. They really did him dirty in the sense that they burned his red shirt for 6 games, and there was only like 2 games where he carried the ball more than twice. So they basically burned his red shirt to give him like 1 carry in 2 games. So I think that's part of the reason why he transferred. They've got their top 2 backs next year, so they're probably like what's going to prevent these guys from blowing his red shirt again? And then all of a sudden he's down 2 years of eligibility. He hasn't even played like 11 games. So um, this guy is a legitimate talent, though. And if Nebraska can get him, he'd probably be, the best running back addition. I don't know when, but he would be huge. He would be a perfect fit for this scheme. And hopefully that visit will turn into a commitment.
And the wide receiver from Wake Forest is also going to be visiting, I think, next weekend as well. So
And
that
that's
what's his name off the? I don't remember off the top of my head.
Jamal Banks. So he's 6'4", 208 pounds. He's had over 600 yards receiving each of the last 2 years with Wake Forest. He's got like 1,400 career yards. So I mean, not like a superstar, but he would give you that size, that big wide out on the opposite of like Malachi Coleman, and just kind of, just a veteran, I think, to help with that development, because
The
there
Marcus
is.
Washington role, kind of that veteran role.
Yeah, and like there is something to seeing somebody that's been there and done that before. Like these guys obviously going to play, but it's nice to have that leadership. And just I think he would be perfect. And I wrote this on Twitter, but Michigan is the main competition right now, and he's supposed to be visiting Michigan next week. But here's my thing with Michigan, okay? Like I know that they're a great program, but they don't do NIL very well. They just really don't. They basically, I mean, so I guarantee you Nebraska will have more money on the table, and Michigan just does not prepay NIL. They just don't do it. And then the other thing is, obviously, Nebraska, there's no question about who the coach is going to be next year and who the quarterback's going to be next year. At Michigan, there's a million questions. It could be Jim Harbaugh. It could be J.J. McCarthy, or those guys could both be in the NFL next year. So you could have an entirely new head coach, an entirely new quarterback, and they're not gonna give you the upfront NIL money. And so I don't know what Jamal Banks' motivation is. Maybe he really wants to be a graduate student at Michigan. I mean, because academics really matter to some people. In Michigan, that may be one area they have an advantage on Nebraska. But if this is a football decision, if Jamal Banks is, unless he's willing to wait, for like a month or so, like if he wants to enroll by the winter's semester, I 100% see him being a Nebraska Cornhusker.
I feel like there's always a million questions as to whether Jim Harbaugh will come back, but yeah, no,
I
I
mean,
agree. Go ahead.
I agree with you. They're always I mean, the last 4 years as a Michigan person, it's really annoying, but he's got this $125 million offer on the table that he won't sign. So it's like, you know, I truly believe if they win the national championship, he's gone. I think he wants to win a Super Bowl. I don't blame him for that. His brother's looking like he might get number 2 this year, and he's 60 years old. So it's like, how much longer can he coach college football if he wants to do so? I don't blame him if he goes, but in terms of the Nebraska side of things, there's just so many question marks there, and they're going to give him. And Nebraska's going to 100% have a better NIL offer, and so that's why I think he's going to be a Cornhusker.
Yeah, and I think it'll be interesting to see if Nebraska pursues, Evan Taylor from Texas A&M, who's currently in the transfer portal. So they're
Evan
definitely,
Stewart,
or sorry,
Evan,
Evan Stewart. Yeah,
yeah,
Evan Taylor is actually a commit, if I'm not
yeah,
mistaken.
yep,
So Evan
he is.
Stewart, yeah. I think it's going to be interesting to see what they do to fill that veteran role. Stewart would also be a good, Stewart would also be a good addition, and it's I'm excited to see what they do because I think they are cooking up something at the wide receiver position. It's just going to be a question of who.
And yeah, Stewart would be nice. I think Stewart Banks would be a 1 year guy. Stewart obviously would have multiple years of eligibility. I think 3. And so yeah, Julian Fleming looks like has chosen Penn State. He posted something on his Instagram that wasn't like an announcement, but it was basically like a new car he rode, and it was like a dealership that's known to give NIL deals
Saw
to.
that.
So, that's not a surprise. We expected that, but I do think that next week, just keep an eye on it, guys. I think we're going to see some good transfer portal news next week. So that's my prediction.
Somebody gave me a car. I'd sign with them too.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, people like want to get mad at kids for taking money, but it's like you do the same thing. Like,
Yeah, I would 100% do the same thing. And this is the new
it,
world of recruiting. Buckle up, people.
don't tell my bosses this, but if like if another newspaper came to me and offered me the same salary plus a car, I would obviously take it.
Oh
Like,
yeah. I mean,
duh.
yeah, it's human nature.
You get the best you can, unless you have other reasons. So at any rate, guys, hopefully you enjoyed the show. We'll be back. I guess we'll be back on Monday. That probably, or no, I got my days mixed up. It's Tuesday, right? I don't know what day it is anymore. It's
Today is
Wednesday.
Wednesday.
Good gosh. We'll probably be back this weekend. Maybe we'll put together a stream or something this weekend. But at any rate, we're moving into 2024 fast. So if you haven't hit the subscribe button already, please do that. We appreciate all the interactions. And as always, guys, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.